Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Stern, Education Specialist for ISP, and I will be your moderator today. We will begin with a special announcement from ISPE President Sam Reed.
Thank you, Emily. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to recognize one of our 2021 Indiana Engineering Achievement Award winners. This award recognizes products recently developed or projects recently completed in Indiana that are notable for their ingenuity, quality of design, functionality, energy efficiency, and/or their improvement to the environment. Congratulations to the following professional engineers who collaborated on the Newman Road and Railroad Bridge project in West Lafayette, Indiana. James Knapp, Wing Lau, Don Peterson, Mitch Langford, Christy Brown, and Robert Anderson. This project was an initiative of the City of Indianapolis, Purdue University, Purdue Research Foundation, and the Indiana Department of Transportation to replace a 100-year-old stone arch rail bridge. The new bridge deck was assembled bridge side, causing a shutdown of only 106 hours of the active rail line, while the old bridge was demolished and the new bridge was slid into place. Special care was taken to preserve a grove of one of the largest and oldest elm trees in Indiana, and to protect local wetlands and streams in the area. The finished project provides a safer access for drivers and pedestrians to the Discover Park and Aerospace District, and provides a durable, low-maintenance rail bridge for the short line Kankakee, Beaverville, and Southern Railroad. Congratulations to the entire Newman Road and Railroad Bridge team. Don, would you like to say a few words?
Yes. Hello, my name is Don Peterson. I work at Purdue University, and I was fortunate enough to work with the folks you just mentioned, Sam, on this very exciting project. And it was quite an achievement. As you can see in the arch picture to the left, it was really an unsafe condition where you can only have one car pass at a time. And now we have a 3-lane bridge along with a pedestrian walkway and much more amenities that were not achieved before. You can see in the picture on the right, the large grove of elm trees that we were able to make sure were saved during this project. So it was quite an exciting project, and hats off to Wing and Robert with American Structure Point, who was our designers and engineers for the project, and Mitch Langford with the City of West Lafayette, who was our partner on the project, along, of course, with NDOT, who provided funding for the project. So very exciting to be here and accept this award on behalf of Purdue, NDOT, and West Lafayette.
Thank you very much, Don. Emily, back to you.
Yep, thank you. Congratulations to each of you. Now let's get started with our presentation. Indiana Statutes and Rules for Professional Engineering Licensure, presented by Stephen Gilbin and Opal Cole. The session is sponsored by Indiana Chapter, American Concrete Pavement Association. I'd like to go over a few pointers before we begin today. All attendees have been automatically muted to avoid audio feedback issues. All questions will be held until the end of the presentation. To ask a question, please type it into the Q&A box, and I will read it aloud at the end of the presentation as time permits. You are responsible for keeping track of your own PDHs for this event with a certificate provided to you. You're eligible to earn PDHs by logging into a session for its duration. ISPE will be keeping attendee files on record for auditing purposes. With that, I will hand everything over to Stephen and Opal.
Hello, and welcome to Indiana's Statutes and Rules for Professional Engineering. My name is Opal Kuehl. I'm the chair of the Indiana Board of Registration for Professional Engineers. My co-presenter today is Steve Gilman, who's the Vice Chair of the Board of Registration for Professional Engineers. And we would also like to thank Dr. Vincent Drenovich, who helped put this presentation together originally and then has helped us update it every year. He is an emeritus member of our board. First of all, of course, our disclaimer, I'll read that to you. The speakers are expressing their own views and opinions on the matters being discussed and do not represent the official views of the State Board of Registration for Professional Engineers, the Indiana Society of Professional Engineers, or Purdue University. Some acknowledgements. We have our 7 board members' names listed there for you. We have all of our positions filled right now on our State Board of Registration. Our board director is Amy Hall. Her office is in Indianapolis in the state office building in the PLA office, the Professional Licensing Agency office. We'd like to thank Robert Elliott and all of his staff here at Purdue Conferences for helping us put this conference together. And of course, we want to thank Darcy Bullock and Kim Pelfrey, who do so much to make Road School such a success every year. Okay, you were given a quiz. The quiz, you can complete it as we go through the course. We should be able to answer all of those questions as we go through the course. At the end, your quiz will be used to confirm that you attended, and also the quizzes will be graded. Expectations of this session: we will look at the Indiana Code versus the Indiana Administrative Code. We'll look at some of the selective statutes and rules, including Comity, the SEAL, computer-based testing, rules for continuing education, and we'll give you a little follow-up from the audit from 2018. We'll also talk about a little bit about the board structure, legislative matters. Right now, the last time I checked, there wasn't anything pending in the legislature. We put that in just in case something came up before Road School and there was something we wanted to discuss, and they will have some closing comments. Changing from the previous version, applications for licensure from engineers without an ABET EAC accredited degree. More information is available now on computer-based testing for the PE exams. We'll look at the NCEES record for Comity. We'll talk about information about the board itself and how it works. And then we'll look at a little bit at the board newsletter. Expectations. By the end of this session, you'll be more knowledgeable of the statutes and rules. You'll know where to get accurate information. You'll learn how continuing education is working, and you'll have an overview of computer-based testing, the NCEES Continuing Education Tracking Service, and functions of the Registration Board. Okay, first of all, the Indiana Code. The Indiana Code are the laws that are established by the legislative process. The Indiana Code that applies to professional agencies is 25.1.11, and we have websites and links throughout this presentation that you can look at and get more information, both from the state level and the national level. It sets a professional licensing standards of practice, it defines the boards, and it empowers the boards to make rules. The section that specifically applies to professional engineers is 25-31, and that is the regulation of engineers and the creation of the engineering board. Okay, the Administrative Code, IAC, is a compilation of the text of the permanent administrative rules. These rules are created by the various boards. They're approved by procedures set up in the Indiana Code, and it frequently refers to the Indiana Code for authority and guidance. And 864 1.1 is the administration and general requirements for engineering. The Indiana Code, when I was mentioning that before, it applies to all of the boards. There are 40 different boards in Indiana. The staff for the board is in the state office building. We meet twice a month. We have 2 administrative members from the agency that works with our board, and then we also have an attorney assigned to our board from the Attorney General's office. Okay, here are the rules in the Administrative Code. We're not going to go through all of these today, but the ones that are in bold are the ones that we're going to be looking at. It's the qualifications for exam, applications, examinations, comity, the registrant's seal, and continuing education. Changes to the rules. We clarified the accreditation degree to say an EAC ABET degree, or sometimes you see that ABET EAC. ABET is the Accreditation Board of Engineering and Technology. EAC is Engineering Accreditation Commission. Just so you can keep that straight, you'll see that quite a bit in the presentation. We clarified the examination attempts timeline. We updated the seal because sealing plans used to just include signing them. Now there are a lot of digital and electronic types of seals. The comity, the fee was reduced from $500 to $300. And for applicants without an ABET EAC degree, a non-accredited degree, there is still a route that you become a professional engineer. It's just that we have to look at more of your information. We have to look at the coursework in more detail, and so we've upped the number of credits that need to be shown on our information sheet from 44 to 54. We increased the flexibility in math and science, and we added a new category called additional engineering topics. This is our new supplemental information form, and I know this is very small and you probably can't read it there, but at least you can see what you're looking for if you look on our website and you want to look at this. This would be on our state website. The 5 columns, 12 hours of math, 12 hours of sciences, 12 hours of engineering sciences, 12 hours of engineering design, and 6 hours of additional topics are required. Step to professional licensure. First of all, graduate from an EAC ABET accredited program, and as I said before, there is a route to take if it's not an accredited program. You have to pass the fundamentals exam. You have to have 4 years of experience. A master's degree can count as 1 year. A PhD can count as 2 years of your experience. And then you have to pass the PE exam. 14 states have already done what we call decoupling. That means there are certain states that you do not have to get the 4 years experience before you take the PE exam. We are not one of those. The other 36 states and the 5 or 6 territories that are part of NCEES all still require the 4 years of experience before the PE exam. Okay, the fundamentals exam. Ordinarily, students in an ABET EAC accredited engineering program take the exam during their last year or right after graduation. And with the implementation of computer-based testing for the fundamentals exam, nearly anyone can apply to take the fundamentals exam. You do not have to have permission from an engineering board to take the fundamentals exam. And we find that the optimum time for taking it is the senior year. One of the biggest results of computer-based testing is that the easier we make it to take also makes it easier to put off. The most recent data I have, and this was compiled by NCEES from 2019 statistics, is that of the 131,937 bachelor's degrees in engineering, only 51,900 took the fundamentals exam. Some colleges and universities require the fundamentals exam as part of their capstone project or senior design project or something like that, just to get people to take it during their senior year. The student doesn't necessarily have to pass it to get their course credit, but they want them to at least try to take the exam at least once. The principles and practices exam. First, you have to be certified as an engineering intern. You have to meet the experience requirements, the 4 years with an accredited degree. The same thing, a master's degree is 1, PhD degree counts 2 years. And then there are other timelines and durations listed in the administrative code concerning non-EAC ABET degrees. And then you have to have 5 references of people that you have worked with, and 3 of those have to be professional engineers. The PE exams, as it always has been, each civil exam is a breadth and depth exam. We have the links to the NCEES throughout this presentation because most of the information is on the NCEES website. We have the links to transitions to the new computer-based exams and when they'll come online. And there are also practice exams for anyone wanting to take an exam. The transition to computer-based testing has taken time mainly because of the huge amounts of resource materials that need to be put online. NCEES has over 800 volunteers around the country working on test development, writing new questions, and keeping the tests up to date. The most recent pass rates I have show that 4 years is still the optimum time to take the exam. They compiled information from states that do not require the 4 years experience, and this is what the results were. 0 years, if you take it right out of college, the pass rates have been 55%. 1 year out of college, they've been 60%. 4 years out, it's 68%, and 5 years out, it's 66%. The PE exams, as I said before, same slide, sorry. The PE exams, this slide, if you want to look any of these up, this would just give you the most recent design standards that are used for the exams in each subdiscipline. So you could look up any of those for civil, and the next screen you can look up any of those for mechanical at NCEES again. Okay, there's a lot of information on this slide. This is just the most recent data. We updated this in December and in January, so we think we have the most up-to-date information. This is just interesting if you are getting ready to take an exam and you want to know what the pass rates are. It gives a volume of people that have taken the exam, the pass rates, the repeat takers, the format, if it's still pencil and paper or if it's computer-based, the availability, and then the last it was updated. So this is several of the exams, and then this next one is just continued. It's more of the same information if you want to learn any more about the exams and the pass rates and what's going on in your field. Computer-based testing started with the fundamentals exam in January of 2014. There are 4 3-month periods during the year when you can take the exam. The test duration is 6 hours, and all the testing is done at Pearson VUE centers. The computer-based testing for the principles and practices exam started in 2018, first with the chemical exam and the nuclear exam. The other disciplines will follow, and hopefully all of those will be completed by 2024. They're trying to move this schedule up at NCEES. Their latest information is most of the remaining conversions will be completed in 21 and 22, and the structural exam will be the last one that's converted, and it will be converted in 2024. Right now, 7 of the fundamental exams are complete and are computer-based tests, and 14 of the PE are complete and are computer-based tests. The fundamental exam is designed for recent graduates and students who are close to finishing a degree. Once passed, it never expires. And after passing the fundamental exam, you apply to whichever state you're in, and you can become an engineering intern. In Indiana, there's a $10 fee for that. This is a page from the NCEES website. It's when you're registering for the fundamentals and PE exams. You register at NCEES. I want you to notice this because the first thing you do is log on and create an account. And from here, there are a lot of things you can do on the NCEES website that are very helpful. First of all, you can register for exam registration. You can start an NCEES record if you want to. NCEES you can download all of your information from your experience, from your tests, all of your references, your work history, and they will set up a record for you, and you'll have all that information in one spot. They also do license and exam verification. They do credentials evaluations, and then also they do, they have a tracking item on there if you want to submit all of your continuing education, the certificates, you can just scan those, send them to them, and they will keep an accurate record of all your continuing education, and that's a free service they offer. Just a little bit more on the screenshots at the NCEES website on how to register for the PE and FE exams. It's pretty simple. You put your information in there and you just click through the different items that are needed to register. There is one page, the examinee guide. This tells all of the information about the Pearson VUE testing centers, the testing environment, the approved calculators, what you can bring in, reference materials that are supplied, all the reference materials are supplied, online there. You don't bring any books in or anything like that. Brakes, just any of the nuts and bolts. And the last time I looked at it, there's a little video there that shows part of the Pearson VUE sites and how the exams are being administered. The registration process, you pay the fee, $175 for the fundamentals of engineering and surveying, $375 for the PE, $300 for the surveying. You receive authorization from NCEES to schedule an exam. You schedule the exam through your My NCEES account, and then you will receive an appointment confirmation letter from Pearson VUE. Additional information, registration for computer-based exams are good for 1 year. There is a rescheduling fee if you don't take the exam in the 3-month window that you signed up for. The Indiana Engineering and Surveying Boards do not require permission to register. That's a change from the past. And you schedule to take the exam again, as I said, at NCEES at a Pearson VUE site. There are 7 in Indiana. You can take it in any state you can want to. You can take it in any country you want to that has a Pearson VUE site. They're all over the world. You do need to be careful because sometimes seating is limited, especially towards the end of the senior year and things like that when people are taking a lot of fundamentals exams. So you need to make sure you sign up early if you want to get in and take an exam. And Purdue has a site right here on campus also. When I was talking about the rescheduling fees, I think we mentioned this before in our previous edition of this presentation, but the most recent data is up to this point, NCEES has collected $700,000 in these $50 rescheduling fees from putting it off another 3 months and putting it off another 3 months. We want to let you know there are several places on the NCEES website where you can also do the chat now, and they are very good about responding, and you can get a lot of information if you can't find the answer to your questions when you're on the NCEES website. Rule 5, our Comity rule. Comity is when you're registered in Indiana and you want to be registered in another state, or vice versa, if someone in another state wants to be registered in Indiana. You must meet all the educational experience and examination requirements for registration in Indiana. The rules for registration vary amongst states, so you need to check carefully for whichever state you also want to practice in if it's different from Indiana's rules. The fee here in Indiana was reduced from $500 to $300 in 2018, and the determination of Comity is made by the board. Reviewing applications for Comity constitutes a large share of the work of our board, and I guess it's good to know that we have people from all over the country and all over the world that want to practice in Indiana. Again, you can expedite Comity if you have an NCEES record. There's a one-time fee for NCEES to set it up. There's no annual fee, but there is a $75 transmittal fee if you want to send your records to another state. And NCEES has the steps for completing the application. It's pretty simple. You create the account, you fill in the sections, which are education, examinations, licensure, references, questions for the applicant, your experience record, and your payment information. And then NCEES verifies all of this information, and they also verify all the transcripts, and they also verify all the references that you have listed. And then they give you a record number, and that's your record number you use in the future if you want to apply for Comity. And I think at this point, I'll turn it over to my co-presenter, Steve Gilman.
Thanks, Opal. Appreciate teaming with Opal. She and I have been on the state board for licensing engineers for over 7 years, so it's been a good partnership. So I'm going to pick up here and talk about NCEES, model laws and rules, and continuing professional competency guidelines. And NCEES, we use acronyms a lot, so that's the National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying. And the membership is board members from all states and territories. So the key thing about NCEES is they provide for efficiency across areas that are licensing, and they also provide for consistency with their model laws, and each state can customize those rules and laws. And there's a link below there for both the model laws and also the model rules. And the laws are the broad ideas about regulations of engineering and surveying licensure, and it helps drive the board's process and duties for each state board. Then the model rules are more detailed and they complement the model laws, and they talk about the ways that the boards carry out the general concepts introduced in the model law. Next slide. So the registrant seal, back in the day when I received my PE license, we actually used a rubber seal with ink pad back in 1984. But today there's different ways of doing that. But the key thing is not the seal itself and how you do it, but it's what you're signifying. And when a registrant is responsible charge in engineering work, okay, for whether it's specs, plans, or drawings, they apply their seal, okay, for that area that they're doing the work for. And so what you're doing there is you're validating that that's your work, okay, and that again, your work is that you do that is to protect the public. Next slide. A person who's not responsible in charge of the entire work, okay, but assumes responsibility for a portion of their work, okay, again, on those three areas, specs, plans, and drawings, still has to affix their seal, okay, for that section of all title pages and all pages where their work appears. And then you kind of highlight that work that your seal applies to, whether it's clouding it in or what some way of identifying that that's your work as opposed to the total work of the project. And here's an example of doing that for a specific part of the work, and it's in section 3, subsection E. When affixing the seal, the registrant shall denote the registrant's part of the work, again, as I mentioned before, and then you put right in there, covering this specific part of the design that's on that spec or on that page of a drawing. Again, as I mentioned before, the use of the seal signature says that you accept full responsibility, very key and important words, full responsibility for the professional work represented there, okay? Except as another registrant shall assume a limited responsibility for a portion of the work, as we talked about before. Now, the regulations do allow for using certain pre-designed manufactured equipment or products. But the key part of that is when they're established as acceptable, when such items meet standards, like think of standards like ASME, a nonprofit trade group, will propose as it indicated by tests performed by a competent unbiased testing agency, or mechanical, electrical, and other types of machinery or systems guaranteed by a reputable, keyword, reputable manufacturer. And it doesn't affect the structural safety of the project. So it's up to the professional engineer to ensure that you meet these requirements that are outlined here in use of pre-designed manufacturing equipment or products. Okay, so this is where we'll talk about types of seals. And again, this is my old rubber seal. I still have a rubber stamp, but most of it's done electronic these days, okay? So the electronic signature is an electronic version of the physical handwritten signature, okay, just like you sign the documents. The digital signature is another breed of the electronic signature. The only difference is it uses a code or algorithm to sign and validate the authenticity of the document. And it's much more secure. And here are some examples, and these are all from Indiana DOT, Department of Transportation, electronic documents. There's, as we mentioned, the first one is the wet signature, the old-fashioned style. Second there is the image of a signature, like in the first, it's inserted on the original document, or the PDF file if it's a specification. And then the third one, as I mentioned on the prior slide, is the one that's digitally signed, okay, and it gives you more security, open without a key, or cannot be opened without a key, or cannot be altered. And the, can you go back a second, please? The signature could include a seal, but doesn't have to. And again, Indiana Department of Transportation accepts all three forms. Now we're going to switch topics to continuing education. And it was adopted in August 2010. And the requirements must be met for every renewal period starting in July 2012. And then the rules were updated in 2014, and those rules are still current. Okay, so now we'll talk through some of the details of the Indiana rules on continuing education for engineers. So every 2 years, you're required to have 30 hours of continuing education. The second one's the key. If you have more than that over a 2-year period, you can carry as many as 15 hours over from one period to the next. And every 2 years, you must have 1 hour of the course you're taking right now, the Indiana statutes and rules governing the practice of engineering. Okay, it's required. One of those hours, this is required. And the second required hour is of ethics, okay, applicable to the practice of professional engineering. And then the other 28 hours are at your choice and should be applicable to the type of engineering that you're practicing. And you can take either in person or web-based or other electronic delivered courses. And if you're taking a course at university, you can have 15 hours per education semester hour, or 10 hours every year on a quarter basis. Continuation here of these rules on continuing education. And if you're teaching a course, you get 2 times the number of hours for teaching the first time you give the course. And that's because they understand it takes a lot longer to prep to teach a course. But that's only for the first time you teach that specific course. And you also, and I encourage this, point number 9 here, I encourage this a lot. I do a lot of volunteering now in retirement, but volunteering around engineering through different topics there you see with Math Count, Engineering Week, etc. You can get 1 professional development hour per activity, and a maximum of 2 of your continuing ed hours can be through volunteer activity. And the same thing for being involved in a professional technical society. And that's active participation. You're not just paying dues, but you're participating in meetings or subcommittees. The state encourages folks to publish. So when you publish a paper or an article, you can get 5 hours credit for that. And if it's peer reviewed in a technical journal, you get 10 hours for that. And that's one article per 2-year period. Also encouraging patents. And for each patent, there's a 10-hour credit for that of professional development. And we have used this in the past. If there's hardship cases, either a person is ill themselves, or they have armed services duties, or they have somebody ill in their family, we can provide a hardship case for that 2-year period. And if you'd like and you no longer practice engineering, you're not going to practice for a few years, you can go in inactive status and keep your PE license, you just can't practice. But when you want to start practicing again, you have to have those 30 hours of continuing education before you start practicing again and go active. And how do you ensure that you are in compliance with this? You choose courses that are provided by approved providers, and the state approves those providers. And those can be your company, if you work for a company that provides continuing education, as long as they have those approved by the state. I mentioned before, it should enhance your own specific knowledge and skill. You're required to track these and keep records, whether through NCEES or through your personal records. Both spreadsheet form and also certificate. And when you renew, you're asked to check a box indicating that you completed the continuing education, including those 2 required courses, each hour of that. And we check that on continuing education. And then Opal mentioned there's a registry with NCEES that you can keep your courses there, and it's free of charge. They don't charge for keeping your courses aligned there. This is the free tracking. I won't go into the detail there. It talks about how to go through keeping account of your hours, including scanning and storing your certificates there. And then NCEES provides a nice service by comparing what states require. Some of them require a different number of hours or a different time period. And then you can transmit those records to the different state boards when you apply to keep your license current. And this is an example of that free tracking service. So you see the date of the course name, what it covered. You see the ethics course, for instance, 1 hour there, and then you can view the certificate by clicking on the link. We do audit this, the state audits, to make sure that professional engineers and professional surveyors are adhering to this regulation. And the rule reads that there can be between 1% or up to 10% of folks that are professional engineers in the state are audited every couple of years. And when you're audited, you're required to, again, 2018, 134 audit notices were sent, and you're required to reply, listing out your courses and sending certificates to ensure that you had all that training, including the hour of statutes and rules and the hour of ethics. On the initial round, about a third of those 134 folks that were audited were deficient, and they had to come back and provide additional information. And another thing I'll mention is last time there were actually 4 folks that did not respond or couldn't be found. And so I just encourage all professional engineers to keep their contact information current with the state of Indiana, because if that happens, you could lose your license if you don't reply to the audit. And so there's, as part of the penalties and enforcement, you could absolutely lose your license. And if you checked that box and said that you did comply and had 30 hours, but in fact, during the audit, you didn't, then we will fine the person from $1,000 up to $5,000, depending on how flagrant it was. I mentioned this a bit earlier, approving continuing ed courses that your business that you work at may provide, or courses that you found that you want to take. Those courses, course providers are approved by the board, and they have to do that every year by February 15th, and the board reviews to make sure that they are active providers. Talk about board appointments, now a different topic here. Opal earlier showed you the list of board members. And so the board is set up to have 7 members. 6 of them are registered professional engineers. And Section 3 sets up that 1 member is appointed to represent the general public. But he has to reside, the person has to reside in the state, he or she, and they're not associated with professional engineering or anything other than as a consumer. So we want their voice too. And all members of the board are appointed by the governor. And here's the requirements for a professional engineer to be a member of the board. You have to be a citizen of the US, reside in Indiana for at least 5 years prior to the appointment, have been a registered professional engineer and engaged in lawful practice of engineering for at least 12 years, and responsible for engineering work or engineering teaching for at least 5 years. And the term are 5-year terms, and at any time they can, we can renew those terms for another period. And they serve until their successor is appointed and qualified. And we just had, Opal and I are the only ones that carried over from the prior board. So the other 5 are new members. See our nice mugshots here. Opal's the board chair. I'm the vice chair, and we rotate these roles throughout the board as folks have experience to get different folks in leadership role, but work very, very close together. And you see our bios there. Okay, so now we'll talk about changes to the model law and the rules. And again, the laws are at the high level, and then the rules are the specifics. And again, the key word here are model. And so the states are not required to implement these, but they should use those as a model as they think about the rules for their own state. So first one is, Opal mentioned, the engineering and surveying fundamentals exam can be taken anytime by anyone. Don't have to have approval ahead of time. The model rule does say that the PE exam can be taken anytime after passing the FE exam. Now, Indiana does not allow for that, but 14 other states do. And as Opal mentioned, we see the value of having the work experience before taking the exam, and it shows out in the testing results too. And NCEES is considering allowing persons with ETAC, ABET accredited degrees. So ETAC is engineering technology as opposed to engineering, okay, to be eligible for licensure. It did not pass, it was presented. And so folks that have ETAC ABAT accredited degrees have to go through the longer form, since it's not an EAC accredited program, the longer form to apply. They still can get their license, but they have to go through a longer form to apply for that and fill out that table. Now we'll talk about legislative matters and professional licensing. From time to time, we call it threats to professional licensure. There's legislation that is proposed in different states from time to time that talks about letting anyone do work as a professional engineer without schooling, without licensing. And right now, there you see the states there that are 6 states that are thinking about that. And when that happens, NCEES gets involved and they do appropriate education of legislators and the importance of having a professional engineering license to do engineering work in the state. But this is something that we have to stay on top of to ensure that the general public does have the safety they have by having engineers do the design work. There's actually a group that's been set up, Alliance for Responsible Professional Licensing, across all areas that are required to be licensed. And NCEES partners with this group to ensure that we work across states and territories, that professional licensing is held at the right level. And there's also a manufacturing exemption. So if you work for a large company, that you're working within that facility, that is a area that you do not have to have a professional license unless your work does involve the protection of the general public, because your company covers that risk. So this talks about a little bit of detail. And then the last one I didn't mention was if you're registered as a landscape architect. And that person does not have to be, they have an industrial exemption in Indiana under the rule you see there posted. Different topic here, but it's about the National Society of Professional Engineers. We encourage all professional engineers to be involved with this society. And the reason for that, it has a lot of really relevant topics, especially around codes and also around ethics. And current ethics are not always just black and white, and there's different ethics cases that are shared. So you can learn about that and apply to your important work that you do as a professional engineer. So they have a electronic journal, and they also have local chapters, and Indiana has a very active chapter. So now in summary, and this is a summary of not only my section, but also what Opal covered in the first part of this. Professional engineering practice in Indiana is regulated by the Indiana Code, kind of the general, and then the specific rules established by the engineering board that Opal and I are a part of. You can very easily get a listing of these statutes and rules on that link, seen there in blue. And the testing for fundamentals of engineering has been effective since January of 2014. And they're in the process of converting all the professional engineering exams. Started in 2018 and should be completed by 2025 or sooner. And one key about that, as Opal mentioned, is all the reference materials that those of you who got your exam paper and pencil, brought the reference materials in, all that is now electronic. And it's done at the Pearson VUE testing centers throughout the state. The Indiana continuing ed rules that I covered in my section were effective on August 18th, 2010, and were updated in 2014. And again, a review of those license renewal, continuing ed, 30 hours every 2 years, every biennium. One of those 30 hours must be the class you're taking currently, the statutes and rules, and 1 hour is on ethics and the practice of engineering. And that continuing ed must be obtained from an approved organization that's approved by the state, and you can carry over to the next 2-year period up to 15 hours. And changes in the rules of the board occurred in January 2018. So now we'll open it up for comments and questions.
Great. We actually do have Stephen Gilman with us today. So like I said at the beginning, if you do have any questions, please put it in the Q&A box. Stephen, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, no, Emily, thanks. Actually, would welcome questions at this point or any discussion items folks would have.
Looks like there's one question. Has there been an update to ETAC ABATE degrees?
Yes, that was mentioned in the presentation, and the NCEES took a vote on that to include ETAC degrees as applicable for professional engineering license. That did not pass at this point in time. Some states do that. Indiana is one that does not, and so a person with an ETAC has to fill out the supplemental form that Opal showed in her part of the presentation, showing that they have the appropriate classes that meet the requirements shown in the statutes and rules.
Great, it looks like that's all the questions we have. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us. Like I said at the beginning, you're responsible for tracking your own PDHs for this event. You are eligible to earn PDHs by logging into this session for its duration. And thank you, Steve. Thank you for a great presentation. And thank you for those of you who joined us today. Have a great rest of your day.